Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Jacobs. I'm the head coach at Berkeley High School. Nice to see you all here, and thank you for coming to my lecture. I'm especially flattered given that we have the excellent Zach Berg giving what I'm sure will be a wonderful lecture on rebuttals in the other room. But I'm glad to see that you're interested in the subject of verbal precision and word economy. So I guess the first question that comes to mind is why does this even matter? Why is this something that anybody would be interested in learning about? And my answer is that in debate, and this is going to be intuitive for all of you, but in debate, you have limited time. And the solution that some people come up with, which most of us don't like, is just to talk faster. Because if you can say more words, then you can get in more arguments, and maybe your opponents will miss some, or maybe you will be able to cover the flow more effectively and respond to more arguments because you're talking faster. Now, there are obvious disadvantages to this, principally that it's harder for everybody to understand what you're saying. And given that one of the primary goals that you have as a speaker is to be understood by the judge, especially, and your opponents secondarily, doing something that makes you harder to understand, in my view, is ill-advised. So there is another way to say more without losing people along the way, and that is word economy, which simply means being more efficient in the words that you choose to say rather than saying more of them. And there are also other benefits of word economy and other things we'll talk about today. Word economy can make you clearer and more easily understood. Verbal precision, which includes word economy and which can save you time, also makes your arguments clearer and often stronger to the judge. So it's not enough to have persuasive ideas. Half of debate is communicating those to the judges, and the words that you choose to use play a critical role in doing that. So this was advertised as a participatory lecture, and it is that. Um, I'm going to lecture for a few minutes and just give you some concepts to work with and some basic tools. And after that, everybody will be participating in figuring out how to say things more concisely and more precisely and more effectively. So first, I'll start with the lecture portion of this experience, and I will pull up uh, the some slides, and I will then switch to uh, sharing this as a slideshow. Okay, so let me share my screen. Uh, there's the share button. Okay. Okay, so you should now be seeing my slides. Is everybody seeing the slides? Okay, so verbal precision, and this is just a quote from a play that I was actually in as an actor at one point before I was uh, a debate coach. Talent is the ability to say things well, but genius is the ability to, well, say things. So we're going to talk about how to say things here today. All right, what is precise language? It's the use of exact nouns, adjectives, verbs, etc., to help produce vivid mental pictures without resorting to using too many words to convey thoughts. So your words are your tools. And it's fine to talk the way that you think. And this is typically what debaters do. Like, this is how I think about it. This is how I talk. And that's how they debate. And that works pretty well. But be mindful that you have control over the words that you use. You can learn new words. You can choose to express something differently than your first instinct. And often that can be more effective. So a few key points here that I think are particularly important. Um, First is avoiding pronouns. Anybody I've coached knows that I hate pronouns, and I will be very sad when people use pronouns because they are the enemy of clarity in rounds. They are used all the time in arguments, and they unnecessarily make your arguments less clear. Second thing is using more specific words where possible. And the third is using one word instead of multiple words. This has an obvious connection to word economy. Okay, first one, avoiding pronouns. I think we all know what pronouns are, but they are words like he, she, it, we, they. I mean, it. If you transcribe a speech from a debate round and you write down how many times somebody says it, you will be surprised, amazed. And I think it'd be a wonderful exercise to try to figure out what it is in each of those circumstances. And if it's one of your speeches, like saying the same sentence with actually a real subject instead of it. A demonstrative pronoun is this, that, these, that is a word. That comes up all the time in rounds. Again, unnecessarily detracts from clarity. Indefinite pronouns. I'm not going to read these, but you can see the list. And you can see from this list that these are words that kind of convey meaning, but they're pretty vague. They're a necessary part of language. I'm not telling you never ever use any of these words in speeches, but I am telling you these words are used way too much in speeches. All right, so here are some examples of replacing pronouns with proper nouns or more precise words. It would be better. Well, what would really be better is saying something like the plan would be better than the status quo. They will not succeed there. This is a real sentence from a real debate round that I watched. And obviously, you who have not seen the round have no idea what this is about, but even in a round where the judges watch the rest of the speech, sometimes it's kind of ambiguous. Much better to say Russia will not succeed in Ukraine, because then there is no ambiguity about the point that you are trying to communicate to the judge. Second way you can be more precise is to use more specific words. Precise nouns mean specific nouns that make your text more lucid and intelligible to your audience. Okay, so here are some examples. I will be staying with my relatives for the next few weeks. Instead, you could say, I will be staying with and there's nothing wrong with that sentence. It does communicate meaning. It's intelligible, but why say relatives when you could say nephews? Doesn't take any longer to say, and you're being more specific. Flowers. Instead of saying flowers, say lilacs if that's what you're talking about. Instead of saying pastries, say macaroons. And as noted at the top of the slide, one of the benefits of this, in addition to being clearer, is you're painting a better, more interesting picture for the judge. The judge will like that, will appreciate it, and you seem smarter and more knowledgeable if you are being more precise. Precise adjectives. Avoid commonly used adjectives. I mean, it's lazy to say this is good. Explain use a word that tells the judge in what way is it good. These old customs must be abolished. It's okay, but better to say these archaic customs. The juicy, tasty steak can be replaced with the juicy, succulent steak. It has a little more punch. And it's a way of being more articulate, which is one of the things that judges really value and which will help promote your own growth as a speaker. So if you try to use more specific words, you will walk away being more articulate in the real world, not just in debate rounds. Precise verbs. Vague verbs make for bland reading. People lose interest, so use precise and strong verbs. Rather than the player fell on the field, the player collapsed on the field. And look at number 3. Will you stop pestering me, Jim said. Will you pestering me, Jim snarled, gives the reader or the listener in a debate round a much clearer image to work with, and it makes your argument better. Avoid generic words and phrases. So people say very all the time. It works, but it's kind of lazy. And it takes more time to say. So if you say that someone was very afraid of the dark, fearful of the dark, it's just one word instead of 2, although I suppose it's the same number of syllables. But no, it's not. Very afraid, it's 3 syllables. So fearful, 2 syllables instead of 3. You've saved a syllable, you've saved yourself some time without talking faster. Kelly had a very annoying experience in college. Kelly had an exasperating experience in college. So again, if you choose a word, one word that means exactly what you want to say, you don't need to use intensifiers like very. So think about doing that. Good, a very overused word. Mr. White has a good personality, tells us a little bit about his personality, but not very much. If you say Mr. White has a charismatic personality, that tells us a lot more about what is good about his personality. Um, Wanda's design was good. Um, doesn't communicate as much information as brilliant. So again, spreading is a way of trying to communicate more information by talking faster. Word economy is a way of communicating more information in the same number of words or even fewer words. It's a smarter strategy. Avoid the word bad. Teacher warned him of bad consequences. Why not just say the teacher warned him of dire consequences? You get the idea. Avoid there are or there is. This is a common construction that people use. So I mean, today we will go over some common ways in which people in their normal way of talking just like throw in a bunch of extra words that don't do any work in the sentence. And if you can cut out those filler words, then you can use your time more efficiently. You can make more arguments. Um, and I mean, there are the obvious filler words like which we all say. And I mean, funny story. I was thinking of trying to find a clip of Ethan giving a speech with a lot of filler words that I could then use as a demo, and we could all edit down Ethan today. I looked at or I watched around, and I was really impressed because his word economy was excellent, and I wasn't finding a lot of good examples that could be edited down significantly, and I didn't end up doing that. And then, at the beginning of camp today, Ethan said a lot of ums, and I was like, oh, I should have recorded that because then at least we could cut out the ums. But we all do it. I said here today because I'm a human being and I haven't practiced the skill enough. But we should all watch our filler words and try to cut them out because words like or like or do absolutely zero work in the sentence and they take time and that adds up over the course of a round or a tournament. Okay, so weak sentence. There is a requirement from the school to have all children dressed in full uniform. Much stronger sentence. The school requires all children to be dressed in full uniform every day. It's shorter and it's clearer. It's a double win. People, okay, so some of you know Amber Saffer, who was an outstanding, brilliant debater, one of the best debaters on the Berkeley High team last year. And she, phenomenal debater, but she loved the word people. And we would just go around and around about it all the time. She would say, I mean, I think some of these may even be quotes from Amber's rounds. People will let in more refugees when she's talking about immigration policy in the EU. Better to say EU member countries will admit more refugees. That is crystal clear. People will let in more refugees is not. People will have more options. If you're talking about elections and you say, well, people will have more options, that's okay. But voters will have more options, much, much better because then you are being more precise, you are communicating more clearly, and you are impressing the judge. It's all good. Okay, use one word instead of more than one. Avoid vary, see above, move modifiers before what they modify. Okay, so this is a nice little trick. The person who was first. Anybody want to edit that down and put the modifier in front and see how much shorter it was? Really easy.
The first person.
The first person. Okay, that's 3 words instead of 5. You just cut your sentence in half. Okay, you get the idea. More ways to cut words and improve clarity. Unnecessary adverbs. They threw the frisbee away toward uh, the other team. Um, the car is owned by me. The status quo. I mean, I heard this today. In my first lab module, there was a debater who said the status quo right now. You don't need to say that. You can say right now, you can say the status quo, but you don't need to say the status quo right now because that's too many words and you're just wasting time. Okay, omit phrases like it is and there are. You get the idea. And that is the end of the lecture portion. Uh, any questions about that? You can just jump in. No need to raise your hand. Just want to make sure that this was I think I heard, did I just hear somebody say something or not?
Other
Okay, it's just,
question.
okay.
Sorry.
All
Oh,
right.
sorry. No, if the other question wants to go.
Okay.
Um, my question was, um, during a speech, while you're speaking, like, how do you develop the tendencies to omit using too many words such as very, like, or How do you develop that as a tendency?
So that's the hard part because we can all watch these slides and say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. I want to do that." But then you're in the middle of a debate round and your opponent made this really forceful argument and you're struggling to try to figure out how to refute it. And the last thing you want to spend your mental energy on is editing down your own sentences. So what do you do? And the answer is, like many other things, you practice when you're not under stress. Because if you leave this lecture today and you just make a mental note, I'm going to have better word economy, and that's all you do, it's not going to happen because you're not going to remember it in the clutch. But if you practice the skills when you're not worried about winning a debate round, then it'll become a reflex. It'll become more automatic. It'll be a skill that's in the back of your brain that's there for you without having to think about it. So that's what we're going to do today. But it's also something you can practice on your own. I once read an article by an amazing coach, one of my favorite debate coaches of all time, who suggested that one way that you can improve your rebuttals is to transcribe, like make a recording, like give your rebuttal, make a recording, listen to it, and type it out word for word while you're listening to it, and then look at the transcript and edit it. And I thought that was a great idea. It's can be kind of painful to do, to listen to yourself and to see all those words that you used, but you will be better next time if you do that. And that's what debate is all about. It's not being perfect or even good this time. It's about figuring out how to be better next time. And if you can do that, then you are a good debater. Um, and we're going to do some of that today. We're going to be editing some speeches in real time, and that'll give you the sort of a little bit of practice, and you can do more on your own if you're so inclined. But that's the kind of thing that like builds those muscles so that they're there when you need them. Any other questions? So we will a little later uh, work with some speeches. And actually, I forgot to write down the time on this, but so this lecture ends at 2:10. Okay. So um, so we'll work on some we'll take some volunteers to be guinea pigs in a little while and kind of crowdsource their speeches. But first, I just want to practice the basic format. So um, I'm going to paste some sentences into the chat, and then you folks can just like edit it. Just type your most concise, most precise version of the sentence in the chat, and we'll see what people come up with. And I actually need to step away for just a moment, so I'll give you this sentence and I'll be back in 60 seconds. Okay, so it looks like about half of you gave it a shot, um, and we still have some coming in. But and think about this. I mean, not just as a sentence, but a sentence that you'd say in a debate round. So there might be some things that you'd say in casual conversation, but in a debate round where you're trying to be forceful and concise, you probably wouldn't say, in my opinion, or I think. So I especially like the versions that just cut that out. You're saving yourself time and you're making it stronger. Because if you're saying, I think, you're suggesting, you're communicating, well, it might not really be true. This is just my personal opinion. But if you say homesickness is an ailment for students, then you're just stating it as a fact. And it may be debatable, but you want to stake out your strong position and the other side can stake out their strong position. So what we're seeing here is that there are definitely some things that I think most of us would agree you can cut out and make it shorter and or stronger. And there's also some variation. Like there's not one right way to write the sentence, but there are definitely better versions of the sentence than the one that I pasted in the chat. Okay, so let's do another one and see what people come up with. And just to add one more thing to my answer to the question earlier about how do you get to a place where you're actually doing this? If you practice it enough with things like this, where you're editing down sentences for conciseness and you make that muscle strong, you will find yourself when you're giving a speech, just like having an awareness of it, where you're able to edit yourself in real time and you're about to say a word and you won't say it. I mean, something like filler words like the first step is being able to hear them. And most of the time when we say we're not even realizing we're saying it until we say it. But when you can get your brain to a place where you hear yourself saying it, then it's much easier to get to a place where you just choose not to say it while you're talking. And it's the same with all of this kind of stuff. When your brain has some practice editing the language of other people and your own language, you can start to do it automatically while you're talking and just edit yourself in real time. And it's pretty cool when it happens and when you realize that you are being more deliberate about the words that you're saying. Okay, uh, so we start out with this very long, ugly thing. We have ignored and neglected the basic fundamental essentials of college life for far too long. So when people are coming up with much shorter versions, and okay, so I'm looking for the shortest one because it's often interesting to look at to figure out who came up with the shortest version. And then you have to ask, does it lose anything along the way? Is it still clear? And so I think the shortest version is the one from Arav. College fundamentals have been ignored. And so it's great that Arav got it to be that short. And that's clear. I don't see any unnecessary words in there. It does capture the basic meaning of the original sentence. But the question is, has it lost anything? I think when you go from for far too long a period of time to for far too long, you're saving words and you're not losing anything at all. For far too long does the job. When you cut out for far too long entirely, I think it becomes arguable. And so I can see people making the choice to include the sentence for far too long, and I can see people making the choice not to include it. Because there's a perfectly reasonable argument that saying essentials for college life are neglected does the work you need to do in making the argument here, or have been neglected. But there's also an argument that it does add something to say for far too long when you're kind of emphasizing that this is a long-standing problem for an extent. And most people did include that idea, and I understand why they did. But So the point that I want to make here is that there's the low-hanging fruit, there's the easy stuff where you just cut it out and you're not losing anything. And after that, you get to choices. And often there isn't a wrong choice or a right choice, but it's really important to me making a choice about whether the words that you're about to say are worth the time that it takes to say them or not. And that may depend on what the words are. It may depend on how much time you have in your speech, how much you have to get through, that sort of thing. But you will, again, if you exercise this muscle, you will get to a place where you're making a conscious choice about whether to say three more words instead of just babbling because you're kind of on autopilot. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, good. So people are finding ways to cut this down. And again, there are choices about whether to cut certain things out entirely or just to try to chop them down in some way. Um, was there anybody who was trying to edit this down who ran into that, who was like, well, I'm not sure whether it's worth including something about that or whether I can just cut it out entirely? And anybody have that experience just now? Yeah, Alicia, where did you run into it?
Well, I was kind of trying to, sorry, let me pull up the original sentence. I was trying to think of a way because I wanted to say help you find the career of your choice, but I didn't know if I exactly wanted to say to cut out help you, helping you find, or like replace it, or what I should do with that specific part.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that happens a lot, that you're not sure how important something is. And that's, I mean, it's actually, I don't know whether it's a metaphor or just an example of what happens in debate generally. I mean, you are constantly making choices. At least if you are a smart debater, you are. There are some debaters who just kind of say everything that they could possibly say, and then surprise, surprise, halfway through their flow, they're out of time. But I think most experienced debaters will realize that they have to make choices and they'll have ideas of things they can say and just say and decide, well, I came up with three responses to that argument, but really I only need two and I have a lot of other stuff to cover, so I'm just going to make those two. So in debate speeches, you are constantly making choices about whether to say something or not. And the more that you're conscious and deliberate about that, the more effective you're going to be. Sid, you have your hand up?
I was trying to decide whether I should keep you want or of your choice. I wanted to make it clear that it is your desired career. But you know, maybe your career would be too, it would be too ambiguous, and maybe it's the career that you have. Maybe it's a career that you will have. Maybe it isn't the one that you want. So that was something I was thinking about.
Okay. And I don't know whether anybody, that's a good point, and I can see that process. Has anybody else noticed that, I mean, on one level, this is kind of boring. Like, okay, this is not what arguments, we're not talking about what economic arguments you can make if somebody is proposing a policy. So we're not really in the meat of it. So some people might look at this and say, wow, this is really boring. You're just talking about words and you're just talking about that and it. And this is like the driest part of debate. On the other hand, has anybody noticed that when you are making a decision about phrasing, like Sid was just making, it actually forces you to think pretty deeply about the argument you're making and what's important about it and what you need to say to persuade the judge. So you're actually spending some time on the strategy of how to win the round of like, you know, okay, I got a bunch of things to say. What's important and why? Because if you understand why your argument is important in the round, that's the key to winning the round. So superficially, this is just about words and language and a fairly technical skill, but it's actually one more way that you are training your brain to do the work that it needs to do in a debate round to be effective. And that's one of the things that I really like about it is when you ask yourself, what am I really saying? You're doing something really important. Okay, so we've practiced with some out of the textbook examples, and now I'd like to practice with some real debate because that's where it gets interesting. So you're all experienced debaters. You all probably have a ton of old flows on your computer. So you could, if you want, you could pull up an old flow, or another thing we could do is just have somebody throw a topic at somebody else and have that person start to talk about it. So why don't we do that first? Okay, so do we have a volunteer to be a guinea pig to give a speech off the cuff here and then have everybody else edit it for you?
Could the speech be like about anything we want to talk about,
No,
or
no, I think we're gonna have another volunteer throw a topic at you or for an argument they want you to make.
okay, that
Uh,
sounds really fun. I'm going to volunteer.
okay,
Uh,
so well, okay, so I think was that Drew asking the question? Who just asked that question?
I'm raising my
Oh,
hand. I'm
oh, yeah,
Sid.
okay. Yeah, let's just go with the raised hands. Okay, so well, I think I saw Ara first. Okay, so well, first of all, do you have an easy way of doing voice to text that you would be able to paste in the chat?
Me? Not particularly. I apologize.
Okay. I mean, like Google Docs has voice typing is one thing that I sometimes use, but if you don't have it handy, it's okay. I can just actually record what you say and then we'll play it back and people can work with it.
Okay.
So, all right. So Arav is going to be the speaker. You'll talk for just a few sentences. That's plenty for us to work with. And does somebody want to throw a topic at Arav, something that Arav you want Arav to argue?
Um, this house would take a laissez-faire approach to regulating the economy. I don't
Okay.
know.
So Arav,
Something.
so just
I
start.
disagree with that, but
Well, but you're a debater,
How
so
about a
yeah,
hot dog is a sandwich?
I bet you, Arav, I bet you've never stood up in a debate round and say I disagree with my side, so I'm not going to say anything. The other side will.
no, yeah, no.
Okay, all right. So this house would take a laissez-faire approach to the economy. Go. Actually, sorry. Let me just start recording.
Should I do classical? I mean, like top of case and all that, or should
No,
I
no,
just
no,
like,
no. Just start arguing in favor of that proposition.
yeah?
Well, actually, I guess the recording isn't going to materialize until the thing is all over, so this isn't going to work.
No.
So let's just well, everybody try to flow Arav, and maybe we'll get as close to a transcript as we can. So go
There's
ahead.
only yeah. A laissez-faire approach to government would allow the people to develop their own businesses, right? They would allow for the markets to be dependent on the business and allow for businesses to truly hold like strength within an economy. And it would take away the government from these procedures, allowing for a majority of the control to be within the hands of the nation's people. Also, a laissez-faire approach to economics would make sure that there isn't government corruption due to the fact that the government would not be allowed to take part in actions that are happening within the economy. So
Okay, thank you. That's great. Okay. Well, so now we're going to test people's flowing skills. Did anybody get what they think is close to an exact transcript of any of the sentences that Arav said?
I think I might have.
So, all right. Oh, great. Okay. Would allow people to develop. That's okay. Solomon, great job. Okay. So can anybody see places where that could be made clearer, more specific, more concise? Yeah, so just type them in the chat. Or actually, here's what you can do. So you all tried to flow. We don't even need to be talking about the same part of the speech at the same time. If you noticed anything in the speech where you have a suggestion for how to edit it to make it shorter or clearer or more specific, just put that in the chat. And I'll just get the ball rolling by noting that although in general it's a good speech with good verbal precision, at one point there was a filler word. I heard Arav say right, which not a big deal, but it's a little distracting, unnecessary, takes up time. So one thing that I haven't mentioned so far is that long sentences are more dangerous. It's easier for the judge to get lost. And if you are using shorter sentences and pausing in between them, that also focuses you on being efficient. If you just give yourself permission to have a sentence that goes on for 30 seconds, it's going to be hard to have good word economy. Whereas if you say, okay, I'm going to have a lot of simple sentences or not much more than simple sentences, it's a form of self-discipline. So I would discourage you from having I would like this Solomon's flow. It shows a pretty long sentence that I think creates risks of kind of being inefficient in key places. Okay. The approach allows people to develop their own businesses and allow markets to be dependent on businesses. Okay, good. So we're finding ways to kind of chop this down. I did notice some pronouns in there also, this and that, which is not, and sometimes it's fine if it's totally obvious what you're talking about because there couldn't possibly be any confusion, it's fine, but be careful about the pronouns. Okay. The word develop was repeated twice at the beginning. Yeah, so that could be streamlined. And so yeah, so Arav, I would actually encourage you to save this chat and kind of look at the different ways that people suggested you could have been more efficient and look over the flow, the initial flow that Solomon published, and think about how you would edit yourself. And again, this is something you can all do on your own. You can record your speech, you can make a transcript, and then start just crossing out words and deleting 3 words and replacing them with 1. And that will improve your skill in this way. Okay, do we have another guinea pig? Sid, okay. Sid, and does somebody have a topic for Sid?
I admit mine was pretty hard, so sorry, Arav.
It's fine.
So who wants to give Sid a topic? Oh, come on.
Nobody.
Somebody's got a topic. Solomon, you were volunteering to talk, but how about if you
Governments should implement forced voting. Oh
Okay.
my God, this is a fun one.
Okay, compulsory voting. Let's hear what you got, Sid.
Okay, this is how you know I'm going to rant. Yeah. Stood up. All right. In
And
the last
everybody
election,
and sorry, and just a reminder, everybody should try to make as close to a transcript as you can with your flow.
in the last election, there were large swaths of people who didn't vote. I just noticed something that, okay, um, who didn't vote. Because of this, their voices were not heard. While you could argue that that it is their choice and that they should be able to choose not to vote, I think that this makes their voice less heard. And that if you have that, you don't have a democracy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay, yeah, I wasn't able to think of anything else to say.
Anybody
Um,
have a rough transcript they want to share? Okay. Uh, okay, so this is thank you, Sid. It was a good speech, and you gave us a lot to work with. Um, so
okay, I'm going to.
let's start. Okay, in the last election, that's fine. You're just identifying the time. There were large swaths of people who didn't vote. So can anybody come up with a much shorter version of that idea?
Many people didn't vote in the last election.
Sure.
Should I be doing this to myself, or should I let
Well,
other
actually,
people
yeah.
vote?
I mean, let's
Okay,
have other people jump in because I want to get as many
right.
people involved in this as possible.
I'll
So,
mute myself.
all right. So somebody who hasn't said anything so far, take the words. There were large swaths of people who didn't vote, and come up with something much shorter. Lots of people didn't vote. What if you wanted to use? What if you really like the phrase swaths of people? Because I agree, like many people didn't vote. That's the shortest version. And that's perfectly clear. That's great. But just to play around with this, if you really want to use the phrase swaths of people, but you want a shorter version of there were large swaths of people who didn't vote, what would that look like? Right. Swaths of people didn't vote in the last election. Swaths of people didn't vote. You are making swaths of people the subject of your sentence. And remember, in the slides that we saw earlier, one of the phrases that was identified as being totally useless is a phrase like there are or there were. Those are words that take up time, make the judge work harder to listen to you, and really don't add anything. So that's so I mean, if you just train your brain as a result of today to hear yourself when you're about to say there are or there were and just not say that and make the thing that you're talking about the subject of your sentence, that'll be an improvement right there. Okay. I think we have time for one more. Or actually, let's work a little more with this. Okay. While you could argue it was their choice, I mean, it's kind of a rhetorical flourish that maybe you decide, I really like this phrasing. While you could argue that. If you really like it, if you have time for it, go for it. But what if you want to save yourself some time and some words? Instead of saying while you could argue it was their choice, let's see you can come up with the shortest version of that. While you could argue that it was their choice. If you're just trying to be as efficient as possible, you could argue that. Yeah, so okay, so here's one way to do this, which is totally fine, but it is a choice. While it was their choice is very short, it's very efficient, but it's saying something a little different from the original. Here you're conceding that it was their choice, whereas the original seemed like it left room to argue that it wasn't their choice. Like, while you could argue it was their choice, you could also argue it wasn't really their choice. So the message is a little different, and maybe you're okay with changing the message, but let's say you wanted to preserve that idea that it's debatable whether it was their choice or not. What's the shortest version you can come up with here that doesn't concede that it was their choice? Arguably their choice? That's pretty good. Anything else? Potentially their choice? Yeah, great. I mean, I was thinking maybe it was their choice. Is a lot shorter than the original. Just saying maybe it was their choice, but these are all great. Okay, could have been their choice. That preserves the idea that is a little longer than some of the other ones that have come up. So if we're going for conciseness, you don't want to say it could have been their choice. Allegedly their choice. That's another good one. Okay, so see, I mean, you all have lots of great ideas. When you focus your brain on this task, you can do it really well. The only problem is that people generally don't focus their brains on this task or don't even acknowledge that it's important. So I guess that's kind of my main message here today, as we come to the conclusion of the lecture, is just sort of understanding that you have choices about the way that you phrase things, and that your choices can give you more time in your speech to make more arguments. They can make your arguments more powerful, and they can make your arguments more clear. And that thinking about this helps you understand your own arguments and the other side's arguments more deeply. And these are all things that are really important in debate rounds. So we are at the end of the lecture. Any final questions or thoughts before we say goodbye? Okay, well, thank you for coming today, and
Thank you.
hope you enjoy the rest of camp.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was really
Yeah,
fun.
thank you.
Excruciating at the same time, but really fun as well.
Great.